Hey everybody, as you can see, I'm playing with my blue recorder. Although I prefer to call it flute because calling it a recorder is kind of ridiculous. But none of you never thought I can play this thing, huh? Well, enough of me playing with this. Now it's time for me. Yeah, it's like according to my Doctor Who watch, ladies and gentlemen, look like it's time for me for another sci-fi review. Now I'm going to be reviewing something that none of you people never even thought of. Some of you probably heard of it. Some of you never heard of it, and some of you think I should be ashamed to review it, but hey, this is my show, so I'll do whatever I want. Nay, 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 nay. Anyway, what I'm going to be reviewing for you today is none other than heavy metal. That's my next review for the day, folks. Now, for those of you who never heard of it, and some of you who are really shocked of hearing it, here's a little history I'm going to tell you guys, and this is something that you guys never even knew about the movie Heavy Metal. Based on an anthology comic book magazine called Heavy Metal Magazine back in 1977. Now, it didn't start in America. It started back in Europe. In Europe, it was called Metal Harlot. Metal Harlot. But of course, it stands for howling metal. But when they got into America, they just call it heavy metal. Now, I didn't know anything about the magazine, but one thing I did remember, back then when I was really young, I went to this one electronics store where it showed a lot of electronic stuff and toys and other stuff. And I went to the magazine area and I found myself a heavy metal magazine. And one thing I gotta say, the magazine is a lot like the movie. And one thing about the movie and the magazine, what they all have in common, they have a lot more female nudity than a Playboy magazine. How'd that get there? Charity works for those that get much decency out of pornography. But anyway, back to the story. Now, one thing about this heavy metal movie is that it's a lot like the comic book because it's an anthology movie and it has like over 7 stories inside this movie. Now, for those of you who wants to hear the story, well, let's get this started. The main protagonist's talking item is this green orb who goes by the name of the Lacnar. Somehow somebody found this Lacnar and they started the movie called Soft Landing, where you see an astronaut sitting on an old classic Corvette. Huh, lucky buzzard. How much I would like to have a Corvette. I always have a thing for Corvettes, myself. Anyway, the astronaut who drove this Corvette, he went through the atmosphere in that one planet and landed right on Earth. And then he drove his Corvette to his house, where we get to the main story called Grimaldi. 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 Where the astronaut got out of his Corvette and into his house. And all of a sudden, his little daughter shows up. And he was about ready to show him what he found was this green orb. Now, one thing you should know about the Lacnar, the orb itself, it's a really dangerous orb. It's a big green orb. Anybody who touches it melts like acid to people. Anybody who touches it would get the radiation and makes them melt like the Wicked Witch. So the astronaut touched the green orb, and all of a sudden, bam, he gets melted. And then all of a sudden, the orb, the Lacnar, starts scaring the crap out of that poor little girl. But instead of killing her, he starts telling her the stories. And he starts out in this story called Harry Canyon. Harry Canyon. Now, Harry Canyon was a short story from the magazine, and it talks about this taxi driver who lives in the future. And it was a lot like it was like a film noir kind of story, because the taxi driver is narrating, and one thing is futuristic about this universe in the year 2031. You see, the taxi driver takes no crap from anybody. So one time a punk was aiming a gun on him and says, "Hey, give me all your money." Well, Harry presses the button next to the gas pedal, and the back seat melts his victims. So the muggler who tries to rob him, he gets melted from that beam in the back seat of his car, and it ain't the Lacnar. Anyway, turns out that there was a group of astronauts who found the Lacnar, and that one alien miner, underground people miner, not little kid miner, touches the orb and then just vanish. So now it ends up in the museum. And then all of a sudden he hears gunshots, and the curator of the museum gets shot to death and he dies. And the curator's daughter tells Harry to hurry up, take me away, they're going to kill me. So he quickly drove his car. Wait a minute. That kind of reminds me of The Fifth Element, where Bruce Willis met Lilu. But this is nothing like Fifth Element, trust me. Anyway, when he saved her life, she passed out, so he carried her to his apartment. And then all of a sudden, after she wakes up, after that trauma she'd been through over the death of her father, all of a sudden, she wants him to sleep with her. You've gone through a horrible trauma of the death of her father, and now she wants to sleep the guy who saves her? Logically, that cannot be possible. It's not like if I save a girl noticing the death of her father, I save her life, would she like to sleep with me? No, that cannot be possible. She needs to cope. So I tries to comfort her, not sleep with her. That never happens in real life. Anyway, turns out that Harry got back into his taxi, and one goon tries to point a gun at him, and when he was about ready to press a button, all of a sudden the Kingpin was like, "You don't want to do that. I'm here for negotiation. Listen, the daughter has the orb, and I want to make a trade. The orb with 10,000 Yonix." So, Harry met the girl and told her about the deal, so they went to a bridge. They went to the bridge and finally made the deal. The daughter gave the Kingpin the orb, and the Kingpin gave her the money. And as usual, stupidity. The gangster opened up the glass case where the orb was supposed to be in. You know, if you want to carry a dangerous weapon, keep the darn thing safe, so nobody won't even touch it. But the Kingpin stupidly just touches the orb and then... But it turns out that the daughter, she pointed a gun at Harry, and she says that she wants the money all to herself because she was the one responsible for the death of her father. And she wants to kill Harry and have the money all for herself. And Harry is like, "Sorry, sweetheart, not my style." So he pressed the button, and she gets melted on his back seat and drove off. And that was the end of that tale. Now we get to another story called Den. Now, in the beginning, Den is a scrawny 14-year-old nerd who all of a sudden found the orb. And as he found the orb, he took it to his room, and he was using some scientific thing that he was working on a science project. And he has this device that would shoot electrical current to the orb to see what kind of power does it hold, but it did something different. It took Den all the way to another world. So now he ends up in an alternate world where it's kind of like a Conan the Barbarian kind of world. But here's the strange thing. The orb turned Dan into a full-grown bald guy with big muscles. You know what? Every time when I always kind of think of myself as this big, huge action hero, I always imagine myself with big Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles. I mean, it would be pretty cool if I'm all like, "I'm back! Get to the chopper!" Anyway. Oh, and another thing I also noticed, some of the comedians that you know from SCTV, and for those of you who don't know what SCTV is, it means Second City Television. And it was there before Saturday Night Live. And some of the cast members, I mean, the creator who did Animal House did heavy metal. And he also had some of the comedians from Second City doing the voices. John Candy, Eugene Larry, Joe Flaherty, and Harold Ramis. I'm not kidding. They did the voice in this animated movie. And John Candy is doing the voice of Den. Hi there, I'm Den, ready to save the world. John Candy, the Barbarian. Anyway, in his story, he saves a girl from some kind of cult going on. After he saved her life, now she wants to thank him by sleeping with him, and then they get interrupted. There is this prissy king who wants Den's help to grab this scepter. It has the green orb in it. And of course, Den meet this cult leader who is a woman, and she wants him to sleep with her. Wants Den to sleep with her. What the heck is going on? I mean, it's getting too weird. Anyway, the king and the head cultist fought over each other, and then lightning struck on the orb that they were battling over, and they both were zoomed into another world. Where they go? Who knows? But Dan, on the other hand, he got the orb and destroyed it. And the girl that he saved, she said he can rule this place as a king. But he's like, nah, not my style. I got more places to explore. So they hop on their flying bird-like alien. Well, actually, it looked like a giant dragonfly. They hop on this dragonfly and just giant dragonfly and just flew around, and that was the end of Den. And then after that, we went to another story called Captain Stern. Now, this one is more of a science fiction story. Captain Stern, he's this crooked space captain who is on trial now. He blamed himself to be not guilty, but everybody's getting worried because he's an idiot. They think he can get off scot-free if he blames himself not to be guilty. And he says he has the upper hand. He has a guy who goes by the name... Well, I forgot his name, but this puny janitor shows up, and he found this green orb. Now, when he was in the witness box, he was playing with the orb, and then all of a sudden, the orb turned him into a big, beefy, bald guy, and all of a sudden made Captain Stern look bad. He starts racking up the place and starts going after Captain Stern. And as Captain Stern went to the end, Captain Stern decided to calm him down by giving him what he owes him. 5,000, well, he just gave him a whole lot of money. And after he got all the money and got what he wanted, he turned back into a puny janitor. But the captain, he flipped a switch and ended up on the trap door in space. So now, the janitor's gone. And then they get to the other story called the B-17. It's a World War II story where there's a bunch of B-17 planes just shooting the Germans. And then from out of nowhere, out comes the green orb, just get into the B-17 plane, and all of a sudden starts turning all the pilots into zombies. Now, I don't know about you, but that was the most scariest thing I ever seen in my life. I mean, I hate zombie films, and that is exactly what nightmares are made of. One by one, all of his crew members kept getting killed and turned into skeletal zombies, until the last survivor, the captain of his own B-17 plane, starts noticing all his friends are all turned into zombies, so he decided to make his escape. So he jumped out of his plane with the parachute, so he let his plane crash land. And as he turned on the parachute and just landed into an island, he discovered he ended up in an island full of crashed planes. And in those crashed planes are more of those zombies going all. And the captain was surrounded, and that was the end of his story. And now to the other story called So Beautiful, So Dangerous, where now it takes place in the Pentagon. Now, there is this shady-looking guy with sunglasses who kept telling everybody that aliens doesn't exist. He goes to the Pentagon to have a meeting, and he starts talking about that there are no existence of any aliens whatsoever. And then all of a sudden he had his eyes on the really hot-looking secretary, who is actually wearing the green orb around her neck. I mean, she's wearing the orb as a necklace. And it malfunctioned because it turns out that shady guy was a robot. And he kept going after her. I mean, just grabbing her, holding her down on the table, while the aliens themselves showed up, drill a hole through the ceiling, and sucked him up and accidentally picked up the secretary. And then all of a sudden, their android was destroyed, and John Candy himself doing the voice of the robot going like, "Oh, heck, how come not again? That's the third time we repair him. He's completely whacked. Gotta go through the whole thing." And then there's Harold Ramis doing the voice of another alien. And all of a sudden they found the secretary they accidentally kidnapped. Well, I wouldn't say kidnapped, they accidentally abducted her. And then all of a sudden the robot starts having feelings for the hot secretary. And she was kind of amazed at what she's in. She's in a spaceship ready to go to another galaxy in another universe. So, instead of wanting to go back home, she wanted to stay. And of course, she ends up with the robot. And then two of the robot's alien buddies, they were going through the galaxy, and you can briefly see the Starship Enterprise passing through as they're going through this universe. Imagine that. And then all of a sudden, the robot wanted to start a relationship with that secretary, and she said well, here's a couple of things you need to go through. And it was like, yeah, what's that? Need to go through marriage, need to have some kids, and all that other stuff. And he was like, okay, I'm in for it. And that was the end on that story. And then here's the longest story ever made and made it really popular. And it focused on the cover right here. This woman here flying her bird-like alien. And it's called Tanarna. Tanarna. This here is Tanarna. Now, her story starts, the green orb went to another planet, and it landed inside of a volcano. And when that green orb went to the volcano, it burst into a huge green goo, and it covered a small valley, and a couple of people who were in that small valley, they were drowned in the goo. Now, you think they're going to melt just like what the orb does to other people, but no. It transformed people into green skin, yellowed eyes, bad guys who wants to pillage and destroy everything. And a group of people, they summon Tarna. Summon Tarna over to bring hope. And as usual, she took a long time to put her outfit on, which it's not exactly much of an armor. Anyway, she got on her bird and see that the village that they summoned her everybody is dead. But it's up to her to take vengeance. So she find the people, go one-on-one with the main bad guy, and then, bam, she won, killed the leader of the bad people, and then she took off with her alien bird. And then the story ended with the orb telling the girl that this is all he can say, and the only thing he can do is self-destruct. So the girl quickly run out of her house while her house was completely destroyed. And then the girl turned around and saw the alien bird, and it turns out that the little girl, she's her. She's Tainara. Ta'arna. I hope I get the name right because I'm having a hard time trying to pronounce it half the time. Anyway, the little girl transformed into her and flew into the stars. And that's heavy metal for you. Now, it became a cult classic even to this day until in the year 2000, they decided to do it again. So therefore, they made Heavy Metal 2000. Now, it has the same violence, nudity, and the same stuff just like the original Heavy Metal had. Except, this one is not exactly an anthology. This one is more based to one story, and it's called FAK 2. FAKK 2. And it stands for Federation Assigned Etanagaf Kill Zone to the second level. And believe it or not, the premise in this story, you have Michael Ironside doing the voice of the bad guy who goes by the name of Tyler. And Tyler, he becomes the bad guy, and there's no green orb in this movie, so there's no green orb involved in this movie. But you got this bad guy named Tyler who just kidnaps a girl. And the hero in this story is, of course, this woman named Julia. And believe it or not, she is voiced by a former model and B-rated movie actress named Julia Strain. Now, some of you people probably remember her as a model, and probably I heard rumor that she was also a Penthouse model too, and also became a B-movie actress. And also, and of course, Billy Idol is in this movie. I guess he's here to rock the cradle with love, bow now now now. Rock the cradle with love, bow now now now. Doing a love, don't want easy, yeah now, ow. But in the premise of the story, Julia, her sister, gets kidnapped by Tyler, and of course, Billy Idol, he plays Odin. He plays this mysterious alien telling her what she needs to deal with and what she's going to be facing against. So he's pretty much like the guy who tells her what's going on, and it's up to her. She's the only person to stop it. And the guy who does the voice of Tyler is voiced by Michael Ironside. Now, I am familiar with Michael Ironside. If you remember my review of Starship Troopers. But he did a pretty good job doing the voice of the bad guy, Tyler. Now, I haven't seen the movie, but I heard a lot of reviews from it. The second movie was good, but it had too many pacings. But all in all, it still had the same premise and the same style, just like Heavy Metal, except the animator was brand new. It was the same animator who made that animated movie called Titan AE. Now, I remember seeing that. Now, for those of you who are die-hard heavy metal fans, my suggestion to you guys is maybe order some heavy metal magazine if you want to get more stories from it, or check out the movie or the sequel. It's up to you. Well, this here is my review of heavy metal for today. So for those of you who like this review of heavy metal, please leave a comment down below, hit like, and subscribe. As for me, I had to apologize for taking too long. I mean, I've been waiting for so long for a certain franchise that my mom ordered for me, and now it finally arrived. And this is going to be coming up next. My next review is going to become Star Wars. Gee, if I knew I'm going to be in a Star Wars universe, I would have traded my sonic screwdriver for a sonic lightsaber. What the? Huh. Whoa. Huh. The Force is strong within me. See you soon.